Hi, I'm Grady Collane in the CapeCod.com News Center, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest from YMCA Cape Cod. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Good afternoon. Stacy Peugh. I'm the president and CEO at the YMCA Cape Cod here on the Cape.
Awesome, Stacy. Thank you so much for joining me in studio for this conversation.
Great to be here.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, but of course the jumping off point for this conversation was we had some cool news. Governor Maura Healey was on Cape at YMCA to talk more about childcare funding. We have about $50,000 going to Barnstable Public Schools and $250,000 for Sandwich Public Schools to expand more seats for children in general. This is part of an ongoing initiative to expand universal pre-K across Cape Cod, the region at large, the state at large, of course. It's the governor. But I wanted to get you in to talk a little bit more about this initiative. How exciting was it to have your organization chosen as the point that Governor Maura Healey would be talking about, and just a little bit more about kind of your thoughts. So I guess, what's your reaction to this news?
Yeah, Governor Healey, she really is super passionate about early education. She understands how important preparing young children for school and school readiness is, and has really been focusing a lot on state budget and how that can be utilized, because it's all about finding resources to support the early education field. So we were super excited to hear that she wanted to work with our location, knowing that we offer quite a few early education programs across Cape Cod, and for her to pick us was quite the honor, and our team was thrilled to have her.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as well, recently we had Governor Maura Healey. She was at Housing Systems Corporation, so we've had a lot of Governor Maura Healey guest appearances on Cape as of late. Of course, it's for the beautiful water and the lobster rolls. No, but that is wonderful. It is awesome. I did want to ask you a little bit more about, in light of this, kind of what the general childcare situation on Cape is. I guess just a cold question, like quick response. What do you think of childcare on Cape? Is it good? Is it bad? Where are we?
Struggling.
Struggling.
I think is a good word to use. I kind of reflect back before the pandemic and just childcare industry in general across the nation. It's always been a struggle, but I think it's worse. And certainly for us, we didn't used to have the extreme challenges finding staff for our programs. And I would say those challenges are much more extreme. And it's kind of a vicious cycle, because people who work in the childcare field also need childcare for themselves to be able to work. And so if they don't have slots available for them, it's just very, very tricky.
Yeah, that is definitely unfortunate. I actually never occurred to me that they themselves might have children in addition to the kids that they have to look after for childcare in general. But it is, definitely a vicious cycle. Just for our listeners, do you want to kind of highlight some of the childcare options that YMCA offers, just so we kind of know what point of view you're coming from?
Sure, yeah. We offer early education care starting at 3 months of age all the way up until they're launching into middle school and high school. So typically they're before and after school programs in partnership with the different public schools on the Cape. But the early education really is where we are spread out quite much across the Cape. We offer a program in Harwich, we offer programs in Barnstable, we offer programs in Falmouth, and then we do all kinds of programming for school-age kids, again in public school buildings, and then summer camp programs. So what kids are doing during that out-of-school time is a huge element of what the Y does to serve youth on the Cape.
All right, awesome. You guys are clearly seeing running the whole gamut when it comes to childcare across the Cape. When it comes to challenges, is it a more geographically focused? Like it's hard to find, for example, people on the Outer Cape, or is it more age group difficulty? Is there different requirements? Both? What do you say?
Yeah, it's interesting what's kind of driven this crisis across really America. And so much of it has to do with the infrastructure around early education is a private funded model. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. So if we think about public school and public education, when your kids are old enough, that's taxpayer funded. But in those early years, it's parents who are paying for it. Or if those who can't afford to pay for it, it might be like a state voucher system like we have here in Massachusetts. Or we're a federally funded Head Start program. So now we're getting federal grant monies, to run a program. But you're always sort of jobbing it together to make it work. And that therein lies the challenge, because it's difficult to make competitive wages for this industry of people who want to become early educators. Different from the public school system, where, teachers are still challenged to be paid living wages, but it's 10 times worse when you're an early educator. And I think I know that problem existed before the pandemic, but then I think it just became more exacerbated as the cost of living of things, especially here on the Cape, has, taken this, huge increase. The housing costs. I mean, all these things are interwoven with each other and affect each other. And I think that it truly is, because it is not a sustainable career. So we've been losing that pipeline of young people wanting to go into early education, even though that they see themselves working with children. How can they put a roof over their head? How can they afford the grocery bill every month? In this community in particular, that's even more exacerbated. But it's a nationwide issue.
Yeah, Cape has always kind of had this added difficulty with it being the summer-focused economy, the visitor-focused economy, as I've heard many of economic professionals say. But we've also had that huge issue with sustainable year-round housing for our workers, and childcare has played into that as well. I've heard a lot as well. So State Senator Susan Moran previously stated that this has also become an issue where it's a very a gender-focused issue, because a lot of women, particularly, were having to leave the workforce during COVID because someone was taking care of the kids, and just it happened to be women for a variety of cultural reasons, amongst many others. And now a lot of them are having difficulty getting back into the workforce. Is that something you can corroborate as well or comment on?
Yeah, and I think we're even seeing it in our childcare worker workforce.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so if they don't have childcare for themselves, how can we get them to come back and work in the classrooms if they're caring for their own kids?
Very female-dominated field,
Yes.
all the way through kindergarten.
Yeah.
I mean, teachers in general.
Yes, it is. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the solutions are tricky, but, Governor Healey really investing in resources to help build up this system. If this state ends up being in a position of universal pre-K, which is where you would now have a publicly funded 3- and 4-year-old system preparing children for kindergarten, I think it will help significantly to really help women be able to afford, how do I work and still afford childcare for my own child? And this will be a huge burden relief for those families. How do you get two parents working? I think during the pandemic, this is just me thinking about it.
we can anecdote. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm just really, I think people figured it out, like how can one of us work, the other one stay home, and figure out how to still manage our financial household? And that was forced upon society broadly. And so people have readjusted and readapted to, hey, we've actually been able to make this work. You don't have to go back to work. You can stay here until whenever that next family milestone might be for them, when their children age up into public school, and now they're at school all day. So maybe that's when someone goes back to work. But for those, young ones, the infants, the toddlers, the preschoolers, we still have time for those children who were born during the pandemic and were preschoolers during the pandemic, for that family to have those children age up where those women can now go back to work.
Oh goodness, what a categorization that we're going to be having in a few years' time of, were you a pandemic baby or not? That's
Yes.
so sad. I'm sorry to define you that way, future children.
Yep.
But a lot of the issue though is that it's also impacting even children, even families who don't have kids yet, because they're like, well, I want to have kids, but I can't afford to have childcare. And so what we've been seeing from this is like a very statewide view, so as to say, but we have a microcosm of it on Cape Cod, is a lot of these families are then like, well, I'm going to move. I'm going to leave Massachusetts because I don't have the money, or the childcare is awful, or I can't find year-round sustainable housing, or what have you. So it's like involving people even thinking about kids. Do you think that we'd be able to kind of, be a better advertisement if we had better childcare for being able to keep families in Massachusetts, on Cape Cod in general? What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that, Governor Healey has talked about that. Many of our representatives and senators have really talked about how important it is to be able to attract a diverse workforce, and that's age diversity, and how do you attract and retain a young professionals audience. So I do think that the more benefits that there are offered by the state that you live in, the more attractive that becomes to being a location to stay in and not move from. That may affect our tax dollar someday. You don't know what that will end up eventually looking like, but it's sort of a constant push-pull between, if we don't reinvest here, it's hitting us on the back end.
Yeah, we pay for it one way or another, in your opinion.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Yeah, the dreaded T word.
The
tax.
dreaded T.
I hope everyone's gotten their taxes in, by the way, because we did just wrap up. So
that's right.
A quick reminder to, if you haven't filed an extension, they're coming for you.
Yes.
But otherwise, so a lot of interesting stuff with childcare. Obviously, this isn't going to be stuff solved overnight. But in the next few years, would you like to see like state funded pre-K? Like how much time do you offer childcare from 3 months, which is very young. Do you think that is something that the state should be doing, or do you think maybe just like the ages 3 to 5 would be enough? Like, what would you like to see?
Well, I've got a full background in the value of early education and high quality early education. And our children are in their most growth and development stages that's going to carry them through their whole lives in that birth to 3. That is the most critical time for brain development, social development, emotional development. All of these things are firing at such a rapid pace in a young child's brain that if we do that really well and children experience high quality early education at the earliest of ages, there's been studies done that child, when they're 21, is more likely to be successful. Like, all of the studies are there that the earliest care, the highest quality early care for children pays itself over and over and over again down the road, way down the road. Mm-hmm. The tricky part is these are longitudinal studies. These are things that take years to kind of prove.
Yeah, we'll see you in 20 years when it comes to trying to figure out whether they were a successful member of a society. But that is really interesting. I mean, obviously YMCA has been around for a while, so you've had the opportunities to change things over time with childcare. Do you want to kind of highlight some of the maybe new initiatives or just some stuff that you've noticed works really well from you guys' point of view?
Yeah, I think philosophically, one of the things we think about with the Y and how we approach youth development, it goes beyond youth development. One of my people that I work with uses a great phrase that we're pampers to grampers. And it's so fun to think about that, because as a Y, we really think about how do we have a part in people's lives, being healthier, being happy, being their whole best self. For us, we think about that from birth until the end of time for that person. So we see it as a lifelong journey, and you're right, the Y has been around nearly 180 years, and we've seen a lot of people's lives dramatically, changed and improved as a result of having that lifelong relationship with the Y. It may start in early education, but it may end with, every day I'm going to the Y to swim laps, or I go here because this is where I get my social connectedness, and I'm a isolated senior, and this is where my pals are. Mm-hmm. So there's really a holistic approach and a lifelong approach that we really look at when it comes to the Y.
Yeah, actually, you're touching on some topics that I wanted to hit for later. But this is obviously the major childcare focus section, but I also wanted to ask a little bit more about maybe upcoming events for the summer, things going on just while I have you in here. But before we shift gears, is there anything else you wanted to add about the childcare topic before we migrate on to some of the other questions?
I would just say that I continue to applaud Governor Healey and our state representatives and our senators who are really looking at valuable solutions to the crisis. You really hit the point earlier that this doesn't get solved overnight, but it does start with putting resources into this huge need that our state has, that Cape Cod has, that the nation has, and we're on the right path. Let's just keep going.
Just gotta keep on trucking. All right. So as well, this is I was actually wanting to ask you a little bit about how COVID kind of impacts like the services you guys provide, obviously with social distancing and hygiene, but also like that cultural impact. Because you mentioned seniors who get their social interaction for the day. Now that we're in that post-COVID, I don't want to keep talking about like COVID forever, of course, but it's it's a changing time, the new normal, as Governor Baker was so excellent in describing. But have you guys changed? Have you become more of a community focus instead of just a gym or what have you? Like, how have you maybe changed your marketing? I suppose is the question that I'm looking to ask. But how's it change?
Yeah, it's so interesting how much we adapted during that time frame because we had to think about how do you continue to provide both health and human services in a virtual world. I mean, how many companies did that? But I think what a bizarre sort of real life experiment in what happens to people when they're socially isolated for long periods of time, and what that does to people's psyche and their emotional connectedness to others. And so I think that us being back in person, while it's been a couple years, it's been a slow roll because we have served an older population in general, and that population is had needed more time to adapt, needed more time to feel that level of safety. We're about at 93% of our membership as compared to where we were in December of 2019, which is pretty darn close to where we were before. So you can see that, people need that social connectedness. We never were just a gym. People join the Y because they feel like they're part of something much bigger than them, that we are a total organization that serves people throughout their life, provides these opportunities for people to create small communities and be connected with each other. I think about more recently, we have an aqua fitness class, a group of ladies who one of their fellow swimmers, they do this not just for their health and to keep their mobility and to be in the water, so important for them. But one of their ladies wasn't well, and they are calling to check on this person. They're calling to say, where's so-and-so? Who's sending food because I heard so-and-so was sick. And it's that kind of small community that got so lost during COVID. And to see that recovering and to see that happening again, that's what makes the Y special, is how our small communities of people support each other under the roof of the YMCA. It's what we advocate for.
Yeah, that's awesome. A fun anecdote, very sweet. As well, this is we've had the first few tastes of spring over the past few days. I'm sure it's a very busy time for you guys. Do you gear up for summer? Does your services kind of change with the seasons? Do you want to highlight some of the events maybe you're planning?
Yes. So coming into the summer, we will be wrapping up a great program that we offer, our Y Achievers program, which is for first-generation students who want to pursue higher education beyond high school, but maybe that hasn't been anyone in their family that's ever done that. And so we help support them. So we'll wrap up the school year on June 9th with our Achievers benefit and really celebrate the kids' successes with that program. And that gears us up for summer camp. And so that's probably the biggest change in the organization, is that we're now going to be serving school-age children all day long.
Speaking of childcare things, so
Yep.
It's all connected.
It is all connected.
Please continue.
Yeah, it is all connected. And we have 6 camps across the Cape. Certainly our largest camp is at Camp Linden in Sandwich. And already registration is far exceeding where we were at this time last year. So more of that sort of people, how do I help my kids stay connected with other kids? Because that's another element on the younger side, was how much kids were too much social media, too much screen time. And so how do I get my kids outside and having fun with other children? That's absolutely what we're ramping up for right now. And Camp Linden is definitely the flagship camp for our summer camp options. But again, they reach from Falmouth all the way to Harwich.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I almost wondered if like summer camp was going to go the way of the dodo during COVID. For a little while there, it was like, oh, we've just shut down everything. I wonder how much is going to stick around. But very clearly, coming back with a vengeance. So that's awesome to hear. So we're about coming up on time. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It's been great. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight for our listeners about ongoing initiatives, cool upgrades, or just some of the topics you want to cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say that, the Y is always listening to what the community needs are. We work with individual community members, town governments, partners of other nonprofits in the community. You name it. If someone thinks that the Y can help in an area that fits within sort of our scope of what we're good at, youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility, we are always all ears and ready to see where we might be able to lend a hand or fill a gap where there might be a need in the community.
All right, awesome. Now, just quick, fun last question before we wrap up. Do you have any recommended athletic programs for, say, maybe a very sedentary radio journalist who might be looking to maybe get a little bit of a better summer body going in the next couple of months? Any recommendations? Or
Well, I always say start small with a goal, So is it that you want to be able to hit a certain amount of steps every day? Okay, what am I doing right now? I'm only doing like 4,000 steps a day. Okay, well, my goal, because the weather's going to be great, is I'm going to say 15 minutes every day I'm going to walk outside. The summertime is a great time to start doing these things, because then when the colder months hit, how do you continue that at whatever your place is that you choose to recreate? But how do I find a way to continue this goal that I've created for myself? And by starting small, I always think that's the best way to go. Make it achievable, because that's what we often see. People have the January New Year's resolutions, and then suddenly we've decided,
it's a time of sadness.
I went too crazy.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, small goals. Going to be getting to the top of the stairs in the office building without getting winded.
There you go.
It's going to be the goal
for
this. All right, well, thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm Grady Collane, and this has been Sunday Journal.